So the floor is open. Any question from anyone? The floor is yours. Anna.
Not exactly a question, but I'd like to continue what Fatema was saying. And without judging who it is that has to do something or how it is that we can move and change, there's something here about, as you said, about the mental makeup of the world in general. That concept of inequality is a political concept. You can't run away from the politics. Now, I'm thinking through the perspective of human rights. Nobody ever talked about it. In the past decade, we have seen a lot of emphasis, first of all, on what we call economic, social, cultural rights rather than political civil rights. I don't know if this data that these are first generation, those are second, but I think it should be the other way around. but either way, we are seeing in the human rights community, and not even the community, in the academic work on human rights, people worrying about inequality. I mean, the last person, maybe not the last one, but the book by Samuel Moyn, pretty new, from probably a year ago, is called Not Enough. And here's someone who talked about the history of human rights and thought that human rights is very different from what many of us thought. And suddenly for him, it's all become about inequality. If I didn't know better, I'd say he's become a socialist. I mean, there's really something in the way he's looking at it. So I'm not offering it as a solution, but I'm saying that we have to change the way people talk and write and think about these things. I don't have any practical things to say, except to maybe be a little less Pollyannish than Muhammad, but think that maybe there could be a conceptual change in the way people look at these things.
Thank you, Anna. Any comment on Anna's comment?
Well, I'd love to maybe just keep going around since we talked a lot.
Yes, Monica?
So I was thinking as I was listening before you said what you said to the two gentlemen, and I was thinking those are marvelous things. We are learning new things. We are experimenting with new things. But honestly, how long would it take to make the change that would change the system through your approaches, right? Knowing also that we have tremendous headwinds, especially with the climate situation. So that's one thing. The other, coming from Poland, I was raised there under the conditions of communism. You know, we had pretty good equality at the time, and of course, subsequently, it started becoming very unequal society as we changed the system. I'm not advocating to introduce the Soviet-style communism, but what I'm saying is that perhaps there are certain lessons that we could learn from how those systems operated at the very beginning. What did they offer? What did they give to the population that made this, you know, pivoted everybody to new opportunities? So perhaps that might be the way to look at it.
Sure, maybe we will first get all the questions, and at the end, you can also see just 1 minute. There is one more question at the end, and then it will be your
This one's going to echo what the other two, but it's where is the state in the presentations? Like in transforming an economic model or transforming aid, but without transforming states in either donor or recipient countries. I mean, part of the challenge, I can only imagine, you know this better than I do, is if we were to include inequality as one of the markers in aid, that might be a boomerang issue because I'm not sure that we're dealing with inequality on a domestic level as well. So I guess the big question, and again, it picks up on themes of the previous two, is where is the state?
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I think the most striking image for me was one raised by you, Mark, the home in which the grandmother spoke the indigenous language with the child. The mother spoke both Spanish and indigenous. The child only Spanish. that sort of reminds me of my own family growing up with the Yiddish and the English. And I'm just sort of thinking that we're talking about not just inequality, but separation of everybody from everything. And this is fractal. It goes all through. And it's not only the money, it's also cultural as well. There's cultural impoverishment that goes from the top, as we can certainly see in our present billionaire leaders, to the bottom. Cultural impoverishment, separation of one from another, speaking different languages and not together. And you yourself also, Mark, wondered from probably years of frustration, will we ever, I forget your exact word, but will we ever get there? How much longer do we work? Yeah, also the initiatory pedals against the window. Oh, yeah, that was also another question. I was just wondering exactly how Ben & Jerry's did actually influence you, Weaver. You mentioned that, but I have no idea how they were able, or if they were able to, and how you hope to do it too, because this is a way of the virus model. It's very interesting, but I don't really know if it's just a pipe dream or not. But I do know that all of you can only accomplish your objectives is that if there is someone extremely more radical outside, because all of you have to ask the question, if I really carried the analysis down to its radical roots, would I still keep my job? All of you have to ask that question and function within the answer. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And our last question.
Thank you. I'm interested in pursuing this idea around local humanitarian leadership, indigenous leaders, and how to preserve that, especially in relation to the not-for-sale model. How do you preserve local leadership? And then, with the other two organizations, how to develop but also really give power to the local leadership and local communities to be able to have agency and take charge of their own lives. How do you preserve that? It's one thing you started, but I'm particularly concerned about how to preserve that.
Thank you. Now back to the panelists.
Which order will you?
I leave it up to you. You can perhaps address a few questions together for the interest of time. And who would like to go first? We can follow.
Okay, I can start on a few couple of things. Thank you. Thank you for very insightful comments, questions. And then we are dealing with a very complex issue. So let me begin in this way. Poverty, inequality and interface. So taking that into consideration and taking your questions. One, what have we been learning over the last couple of decades? If we take the last 2 decades as our memory. Our goalpost has continuously been changing. And changing in an interesting way that reveals or eye-opening us that, okay, in fact there is no fixed goalpost. So for example, few years ago, let's talk about a couple of decades ago, we were talking about when MDGs were coming in. We were talking about the world has 1.3 billion people under poverty, of them X percentage under extreme poverty, and I'm talking about only world bank, and that's more income poverty. And possibly if we do A, B, C, D and E, we can get it down. So goalpost was 1.3. As you see that we are right now facing a situation where maybe in one domain that is being tackled, especially from income poverty, like access to financial services, income, other things. But as Fatema was saying, poverty is man-made. It's the power relations. It's not scarcity. We begin to see another domains are popping up, and the goalpost is shifting. So it's like technology came in, and I'm just touching one aspect of this popping up. Technology is coming in, and we began to see digital divide. We are beginning to talk about that the phenomenon of south to north, north to south, is changing to a kind of all to all. So your goalpost is changing, and I personally, in my 35 years of doing this work, began to be convinced you would never have a situation where you say, okay, this is static goalpost, you shoot, it will change the thing and you're done. It's not going to happen, because human societies are going to change and evolve, and your inequality and poverty is going to continually change and evolve. We better be prepared with the fundamental concept that it's the power relations over resources, over decisions, over actions that make it possible. How do we deal with that human behavior in one form or other, supported by institutions in one form or other, to tackle the emerging threats and potentials, to change it to the positive situation as much as possible, to make it equitable for all. I mean, opportunities are equitable for all. So it's not going to be when we end. You are not going to end, because we have newer type of things. So that's one aspect. You may debate on that, by the way. I know that thing I'm saying, it may be debatable. Second thing is a fascinating question of where is the state in this whole thing, and where are the, maybe that also is where are the others. Again, second learning we have that this is the challenge or the inequality as the evil we are talking about. It's much bigger than any of the institutions, be it state as an institution, NGOs, civil society as an institution, business, private sector as an institution. It's bigger than anyone. So it's not going to be addressed by one or other. Effectively managing it requires collective effort of creating a global movement. And here I am not talking about movement in the sense of the movement we see on the street. I'm meaning a genuine movement in which bring your evidence, your learning, and kind of create a momentum by which we act differently. And that requires partnership. It's a genuine partnership of governments or the state, what we call NGO sector, private sector, academics, media, everybody, with a clear-cut, deliberate aim of shaping the society in the way that's right for ourselves, our generation of children, and the ecosystem. If that is something to be achieved, it's a kind of more collective work. Or we bring out complementary, we bring out individual strength and really complement each other and make a bigger difference possible. So that's something is going to be. Last one comment on this local leadership. I fully agree, because that's what we have been talking about. New realization that, unless that's how we focus, the world is going to have, say, humanitarian alone. If you look at it and you put it all the projected data, you see the frequency and complexity of humanitarian crisis is only going to increase. And therefore, you cannot depend on foreign aid to deal with that. You can have some support, it has to be more local resilience, building local leadership, local support. But non-locals will have a very distinct role to play to make that empowerment of the local to happen. Figuring that out and generally investing on that by non-locals is going to be critical. Local leadership does not mean that you wash your hands or search local. It means there's a different role to play, and figuring that out and play genuinely is important. Let me stop.
Thank you very much. Mark?
Yeah, I'll pick up the local leadership, because that's a really, really important question. What I didn't get to in the presentation was sharing about this individual whose name is Martine, who we met 12 years ago. He was the first person we engaged with in the Amazon. He was an indigenous leader there. And I was just there, actually, recently, a couple of months ago. And we actually hiked out to go literally harvest Brazil nuts with him. And he had us get in a circle and just shared. He goes, look, 12 years ago when we first met, everyone here was individually going out and collecting Brazil nuts. And I was starving in this forest. He's like, I knew I was going to die here. Someday I was just going to fall over because I was just doing this by myself and there was no organization around us. And in the last 12 years that we've worked together, it's been a conversation, it's a relationship. We keep showing up, which is one of the biggest things, that we built a trusted relationship. And 12 years ago, they were sourcing about 25,000 pounds of nuts, Brazil nuts, and it was all distributed into the local economy. Today, they're part of a global marketplace where they're sourcing, because now they're organized as a co-op, and we help supplement by helping build drying nuts and boats and CDs, and help with some capacity training as well. Today, they're producing 350,000 pounds of Brazil nuts, and a vast majority of that is actually being sold into Costco, into Target. And we're buying only about 10% of that through Rebel. And as I mentioned, it took 8 years for them to get to the capacity where we could be sourcing from them. But really, it's, we have quarterly check-ins with the community leaders there. Of the 12 communities that we're working with, 4 of them, for the first time in their history, their president and vice president are women. And that has all been through, the ongoing relationship building that we've had with the communities. Do I think it's perfect? No, I don't. I think we'll continue to learn the best path forward. But one of the things that I think has been most important for our learning process was that we didn't want the community to move to a place where now they were just dependent on us as an NGO. We wanted them to be in a place where they could stand on their own 2 feet. That said, now they're exposed to a global market, and global markets go up and down. But perhaps I would argue that that's a better position for them to be in than to be dependent on us as an NGO. There's the question about growth of our model. So I'd just say in 2012, when we were just doing the philanthropic charity model, we were at about 10 million in annual revenue. Today, with our, saying earlier, I can't even call us a hybrid model. I would say we're like a built-in ecosystem or maybe an impact conglomerate. We've literally started every legal model there possibly is. But all of them are interconnected and drive revenue back to not for sale. So we went from 100% charity-driven revenue in 2012, it's not that long ago, to this year still being at 10 million in charitable revenue, but 82% of that generated through our companies. We have $100 million being generated through our companies, just sales. And then in the valuation, and you would open up your word, we're at least $650 million worth of valuation. That's a bit full, but still, it gives you how quickly, just in 7 years, you can this grows. I was just at Wharton yesterday, and I'm getting their advice to vision this out. And if we ballpark that, we think we could be at several $billion of revenue. If we just had 50 of these entities, we're at 12 now. So we're talking about incredible scale with that much additional capital that has to go in. So we've set up funds, these fund vehicles to help scale these companies and grow the companies. It's shocking to see how quickly it grows. And then the Ben & Jerry's question. It's a great question. What it took was a CEO that had both social in mind and also the business in mind. You can speak both languages. So essentially, the CEO that came in, his name is Yassine Sultan, came in and realized, oh, Ben & Jerry's is just not communicating well with Unilever. What we need to do is show how doing good actually leads to a better bottom line output on the financial side. And they were able to prove to Unilever that when they do social good through their social campaigns, as well as through their supply chain improvements, they were actually generating more revenue. And they proved it. And now that's a $1 billion brand. When he took it over, it was a $5 billion brand. So it's linking up, it's telling, it's storytelling, but also showing how it can actually attract talent. That's what we're finding. At Rebel, our company, we have 100 employees. 90% of those employees there are there. This is outside research done into our company. 90% of the employees at a business are there because of not for sale. because they're driven by social impact. They want to be a part of brands that are doing things too. And I would just say in closing, because we're an anti-human trafficking organization, we focus on slavery. I look historically to someone like William Wilberforce, who 400 years ago in the UK was a part of Parliament and really driving change from a governmental standpoint. He also started, it's not known, he started 70 NGOs because he knew he needed to change culture. So we're talking about here, to change the way people think about, in this case, inequality. And he had the exact same approach. And he started the SPCA of all things. Why? Because he said if people treat animals right, they will treat fellow humans right. I think he's wrong. Sadly. But that was his hypothesis. So he started 70 NGOs. Okay, so when we started Not for Sale, my critique was all good stuff. That is important. There's an important reason why slavery continued. Business. And all of the current global anti-human trafficking organizations are based in New York, Boston, and DC. We're one of the few that aren't based in the I-95 corridor. We're one of the few that goes, well, how do we actually affect? It's almost exactly the same playbook. We change policy within government, but we're changing policy within business. We're proving then that you can actually make money by doing it right. And then I think, personally, if we can't prove that you can do business through treating people well and treating the planet with dignity, ultimately we can change as much government policy as we want, but if we can't prove you can do the latter, proving you can make money while doing right, I think we're all done. I really do. I think we as a creature, we're done. The planet will not put up with us. And so I have an extra level of angst about scaling our model, because I really think it's important to have things we can point to and go, this is how we can maybe do it. Like, I don't even think we're perfect. I think we have a long way to go to improve what we're doing. But we're trying to contribute models that we can continue to iterate and improve on. Anyway,
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now we will wrap up with Fatima's comments. So Fatima, please.
So thanks, I really enjoyed the comments and I really enjoyed hearing from those panelists. I'm going to give you one specific example. I'm going to speak about local leadership, but I think it ties in some of these other pieces around state and other pieces. So I want to give the example of Indonesia and the Philippines. They, for those of you that know the geography or have been there, they are on our Ring of Fire, Typhoon Belt, all these other big terms, just to say that they literally sit at ground zero around tsunamis, earthquakes, typhoons, all of these phenomena throughout history, but exacerbated today, obviously, with the warming climate. So you see a lot of these big mega typhoons, tsunamis coming into space, and they deal with that every year as a natural part of how they prepare their citizens. So I'm going to call those examples because in the last 10 years, since I'm going to go back to the 2004 tsunami, remember that in the Indian Ocean that hit many, many countries, including all the way from Sri Lanka to Indonesia, and Somalia, yeah, but that whole belt, right? So it hit so many countries across the Pacific. There was a second tsunami, I would argue, that wasn't a natural disaster tsunami. It was one that we created from the international aid community in how we responded to the tsunami in 2004. So countries like Sri Lanka and Indonesia really felt under assault from the international aid system, even though it needed its help and appreciated its help, and it needed and appreciated its help. It also displaced a lot of local communities and local governments from actually being able to take care of their citizens for future disasters as well. So that really triggered in the Southeast Asia space a really new way of thinking, and it was happening at different levels. It happened at local levels, but it also happened at transnational levels, particularly with ASEAN. So this is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And so ASEAN has started organizing over the last decade to say, what are its responses going to be when a tsunami hits, when a typhoon hits, when a natural disaster hits? What are the rules of engagement for all ASEAN countries, right? Which is a pretty interesting model because normally that's done at a government level, at a national level to make that decision. They're actually starting to think about it at a transnational level because it's so interlinked and interconnected. So Philippines, Indonesia have been working very closely on that. So much so that in the last few years alone, when these mega crises have been hitting, and they always hit, and they're hitting with more frequency now, in places like the Philippines and Indonesia, Indonesia particularly with the 2018 in Palu and Central Sulawesi tsunami that happened in September 2018, it's one of the first few times it's executing national sovereignty to say INGOs not allowed to come in. And in fact, they created a law in their books where they created for the first time the Indonesian Red Cross, and that all aid now has to be coordinated through ASEAN mechanisms and the Indonesian Red Cross, and all aid has to actually go through local Indonesian partners in order for them to be executed. Now, what does that, in the Philippines, what they're doing is saying similarly that when a disaster hits, the government of the Philippines triggers and works with the ASEAN Humanitarian Response Coordination Center to set the rules of engagement, and similarly, it's done through local Filipino government and institutions and civil society. So, first to say, I love those two examples because it forces an organization like mine to not set the rules of the road. So it's not always up to us whether or not we want to partner with local organizations. In some cases, if we want to be relevant and be invited and have a voice and role to help people in these communities, we're forced to work with local partners. That is a big change in the system. It doesn't work seamlessly, as you can imagine, but as a frame, that's a change. Second, it doesn't mean that we're not relevant. In fact, we're relevant more than ever. But let me talk about what that could look like. And they're different in each context. So in the Philippines, we started working many years ago to say we're going to work on disaster response and preparedness because we know these communities are hit over and over, especially in places like in Tacloban, where Typhoon Haiyan hit in 2013, and areas that are very, very vulnerable up in the north, in Cagayan, which is the typhoon belt. So we have transferred now, in advance of all of this, we've transferred all of our stocks and warehouses to local partners that we have identified and worked with. So it's no longer when an emergency hits, we have to activate international warehouses that an INGO like us owns all around the world. We've already transferred all of our stocks and warehouses to local partners. I was on the ground a couple months ago up in Cagayan, where in September 2018, a big tsunami hit. Within 2 or 3 days, our local partners on the ground had activated warehouses, reached communities, and actually had done all the local assessments that then fed into the UN assessments. And normally those take weeks for the UN to do. We could do it within a week in the international community because local partners told us, and we have a whole system for how to do that. Second, we are helping them on procurement systems, we're helping them on financial systems, and the other audit kind of systems it takes to actually have capacity to handle larger quantities of money to donor standards that may be in Brussels or in London or in Washington, D.C. So it's not always a question of transferring our funds. Local organizations need the capacity to absorb them and to run the money well and with accountability and not lost through local systems, and in some cases where there's a lot of local corruption. So building up good financial strengthening and capacity systems takes time. There's knowledge transfer that's required, and we work with them on that. Third, there are best practices that we know of things that have worked. We have tons of data and research of what works well, what doesn't. Helping with that knowledge of transfer is also really a big learning curve, and it's not just one way. So it's not just from INGOs to local partners. It's also from local partners back to us, what they know that works. But those learning and feedback loops around research and data and the use of it are also really important. So there's much more to say on that. It's one of my favorite topics, actually, so you might be back for that. But just to say there are so many ways that we can be relevant and partner, but it's in a different way. And it's changing that frame of what it means of real partnership. And it's changing the dialogue, the institutions, the infrastructure, and the language. And so I would just argue a lot of our systems really created post-World War II, post-Bretton Woods, right? As we thought about setting up the big banks, the big IFIs, our own governments, our own USAIDs, our own, systems. They're very much of that generation and that frame, and they've been evolving much slower than we need them to do, given the challenges that we face today that in some cases are existential. And making sure that we can mobilize wherever we sit, in whichever sector we sit in, mobilize not just on a mission, but mobilize to change the ways we do business governance actually is a huge imperative, I would argue. And if we don't do that, it's hard to see how we actually hit the SDGs in 2030. Because we can't just take old models to hit new ways, new problems that we're seeing evolving in the world.
So thank you, Fatima. I have so many questions, but for the interest of time, I cannot ask any question. But I would like to conclude with just 2 comments, and I promise I will take less than 2 minutes. First of all, I would like to thank all the audience here. I know we have quite a number of people who have traveled from far away countries. We have somebody from Pakistan, Gavin, you came from Pakistan. We have somebody from India. We have Apollo from Poland. So, on behalf of the organizers of this conference, I would like to thank all of you, and I would also like to thank our panelists. I have to tell you something else. We had 3 lousy days in a row. It has been raining. So this morning when I woke up, I was very excited to see a bright, sunny day finally. And you have brightened our day even more. Mark, thank you. Your presentation made us feel rebellious. I break the stethoscope. Muhammad, and I'm taking the liberty of calling everybody by your first name. Thank you for inspiring us to advance further what you have initiated and what BRAC has initiated. And Fatima, thank you very much for making us realize that we are all together in this long journey and we all have to do our due share. And finally, I would like to thank Sujata for giving me the honor to share the stage with such amazing people who have so many inspiring stories and who are making such impact, who are making significant contributions to make the life, to make the society, to make the world a better place. Thank you, Sujata. Thank you, Anna. And please welcome